chew is my least favorite noise.
You know, it's funny. I was actually just talking about it the other day. It seems like if you break down, it's probably better for us as humans if we did chew with our mouth open. Like if we all were just like.
I don't know that. I have no idea.
I think it just seems. Yeah. So welcome to the Junkyard Love podcast. To start things off, Spencer and I are just gonna for 5 minutes make ASMR sounds into the microphone. Okay, I'm down with that already. ASMR is, so do you know what that stands for? It's they put it in the meditation category, but that seems unfair.
Yeah, it's like audio. I don't know the other three words, but it's disgusting noises.
Yeah, it's I think I don't know. Essentially, you wear headphones and someone has a recording of them doing a bunch of like very whatever. I don't think it's a sexual thing, is it?
Well, I think it
it
is 50-50.
Oh.
If you get on YouTube, a lot of them get banned for being overly sexual. Like, there's a hard implication that this is definitely sexually charged.
Oh, man, that would be super uncomfortable, though.
Yeah, that you get some very attractive woman in scantily clad clothing just whispering.
I know. What about the people who listen to that stuff? Do you think people listen to it, like, driving down the freeway? Like, people listen to a podcast, it's not just on headphones, though. It's in their car, like, it's through all their speakers. You just
I'm sure someone does that, dude. That's definitely not good. I would say. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't like that.
Okay, wait, but we may need to learn more about it because there must be, sure, it's something that people have done to monetize the sexual side of it, but there's got to be people who really like have never felt the touch of another person, or they don't know like I don't know. There's got to be something there that people are benefiting from with the ASMR.
Well, it's supposed to give you the tinglies, like, you know, when you get the chills. Like, that's what it's for. It's supposed to make you feel like that.
It does that to me, but it's the uncomfortable chills. Oh. It's like if I was at a urinal and some dude was like, "Hey, man," and put his hand on my shoulder. That's what it gives me.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Anyway, so maybe next time we'll try the ASMR thing. I only got a couple of seconds in.
No, thank you.
So Spencer is a professional ASMR teacher. He runs a YouTube account called ASMRspencer.com. It's also his website.com. All right, cool. Spencer and I are here again. Spencer, if you'll notice, this is the third episode this is the fourth episode, but the third that listeners will hear because one of them was butt. We did a butt. So Spencer and I, you know, our conversations always seem to peer into something that we're both very interested in. A lot of our subject matter seems to be like we're both on the same page with it. We're able to have different opinions a lot of times, but we're able to have conversation with them. But frankly, we have a lot of the same opinions. So I think that the usefulness there is being able to communicate those ideas clearly. And then also, you know, something I was talking to Spencer about is his demeanor and his ability to have conversation, his good-heartedness. These things open up a lot more types of conversations with different types of people. So we were talking about, you know, having difficult conversations with people who are completely difficult with you or different than you. So, you know, you can't really have a religious conversation with someone who's a different religion than you in a really like or in a non-ill-mannered way. I mean, imagine if you're listening to a podcast and it's two people of different religions. You'd probably be willing to bet that nowadays it's probably going to be a terrible thing to listen to because it's like a debate instead of a conversation. But so Spencer will be on here often to, I guess, hopefully teach conversation and teach how things are going to go here and how we can have different types of people interacting and how different types of people can have these difficult conversations, these interesting conversations, difference of opinion. That's something that I think that our world is kind of let fade away, let float away, is like just because you know one bad thing about a person or a person, just because you have a difference with them, just because there's different beliefs that you both have, we accidentally hold on to these things and then we don't let ourselves progress forward and even have a conversation. So it's like, oh, there's one thing about you that I don't believe, so we're not even going to talk about it. So anyway, just diving into the depths of conversation, exploring topics, you know, philosophy, psychology, things that we're very much into, obviously health, nutrition, fitness, stuff like that. And then really whatever comes along, anyway, Spencer will be on here quite often if you enjoy our content. If you start to get a grasp for the type of things that we enjoy talking about, if you head over to my YouTube and just like comment like, hey, talk about like the origins of the tooth fairy, or talk about like what is fear and what is fight or flight, or whatever you want us to talk about that's relevant. So anyway, Spencer, welcome, buddy. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's getting nice. Something habitual things, doing things over and over. We're starting to do these once a week, at least have the conversations whether we've recorded them or not. And it has been nice. I'm a very secluded person. Usually I've been slowly trying to like hang out with more people, but just the consistency of like knowing that like Monday night we're going to text each other and be like, hey man, what's been on your mind this week? What do we kind of want to get into tomorrow? So it's a nice habitual thing. I kind of like to pretend that we're going to be old 80-year-old men one of these days meeting at a coffee shop once a week to talk about the books that we've read over the weekend, So it's fun, man. I appreciate your friendship.
I appreciate you as well. And I can't wait to be an old man and not have anything to do but think.
Fuck yeah. What is the difference between us and an old man, really? Like their view on life is so different.
Yeah. Old people, like, we slowly just get more rigid. And I feel like if you don't flex this muscle, like a lot of old people don't do this at all. Like I like to romanticize being old and just doing philosophy and hanging out and saying words. Right. But I really hope that I don't get to the point where I'm so rigid in how I feel because I've reinforced it for so long that I just don't get to do that anymore.
Oh, yeah. Because, if you decide exactly who you are at a young age, you're like, well, this is exactly who I am forever, you don't get to explore anything cool for the rest of your life. Right?
No, how boring is that?
It seems kind of boring.
It does.
I like I get my hair cut down the road from the barbershop. I've gotten cut there twice now. And just the conversations with them, a couple older gentlemen, their view on life. I mean, even outside of them being older gentlemen at all, just as human beings, their view on life is very wonderful. I just find myself wanting, I just don't want to talk. I just want to listen to what they have to say. And I think that a lot of our generation, and especially right now, we're kind of like relearning what they've known, like what the older people are like. Hey, slow down, enjoy your life, look around you. Like, you don't have to like escape with all this technology. You don't have to do all this intricate new entertainment stuff. It seems like a lot of times older people can slow down and enjoy the world. But either way, it's funny because we talk about old people in that sense now. It's just like one little genre of human beings. Mm-hmm. But last podcast, I think we talked about old people in a completely different way. Like, we were referencing the boomer thing.
Okay, boomer.
Right. It's a silly way to converse with people.
Like the wizened old person. Mm-hmm. Like somebody that has taken all their knowledge and applied it, and it's just like this nice, gentle old person who's just trying to help others. Right. That's awesome. We love those old people. It's the people that haven't challenged any of their beliefs since 17 and just have lived this complete rigid, I do the same thing everyday life.
Right, yeah, and they don't, and that's the thing is, if you have beliefs that you feel strongly about, you don't have to sit there and defend your beliefs against other people, but I think that researching and learning about your things, like if you reference the entire rest of your life off of one documentary you saw on Netflix when you were 11, like maybe that's going to send your trajectory down a path, and you're going to like avidly learn all these things of what that sent you down. But like just having the one documentary and saying this is final truth, and anybody who argues with this truth I'm going to yell at or whatever, you got to just keep following knowledge, because a lot of the times if you're not following knowledge, you're not questioning anything. If you're not questioning anything,
you're just not growing at all.
Yeah.
And I guess it is the old people, or people that have had a very fixed mindset their whole life, are incredibly sour old fellows.
Right.
But if people have decided that they're going to question all their beliefs, especially the ones they hold to be the most true, which are the ones you need to question, and they continue to do that forever, they will probably be very excellent old people.
Right. I don't know. I think it's hard because, we can't just be like, addressing, again, old people. It just seems silly to even say these words, old people. But saying that what they think is wrong just because they haven't explored anything else, we got to make sure we're never doing that. Like, but again, just being able to have differences in beliefs and differences of, like, in understanding that we have differences is super important. And I think that a lot of that gets lost by the wayside, because there's a lot of wonderful teachings that a lot of older people have that are getting lost by young people just shutting down and not listening. So like, you and I, for example, we enjoy learning in depth about religion and philosophy and these things, but not a lot of people do. So, like, for example, let's say a grandfather's talking to his grandson, and he's talking about, he's trying to teach him, overall what he's trying to do is he's trying to teach them a moral. He's trying to teach him a value. He's trying to teach him, how to be a good man when he grows up. But he's doing it through this feel of religion. So the Bible says this in whatever religion that you're talking to them about. Mm-hmm. The young person nowadays is, I'm not going to use this word correctly, but smart enough to know that there's other people have questioned that. Maybe they've seen other things on the internet. Their friends have different religious beliefs. Everything's also mixed now. There's so much that we can know that the meaning of what the old person is trying to teach their grandkid is being completely lost because it's through this message, this boat of religion, of something that the young kid doesn't understand. And we don't allow ourselves to listen to each other well enough in this culture to really say, like, okay, so you said these exact words. I know what you actually mean, so I'm going to talk to you about that. But what we're actually saying, or what's happening is they're saying something. We're like, I don't agree with the words that you're saying. We're not trying to understand, like, what does he mean? But it is difficult. A young person versus an old person. A younger person doesn't understand that they may not be talking about everything so metaphysical. That may have been super confusing. I apologize, but I was trying to...
The lens that they are speaking to you is inherently shutting you down from even listening to them, because it's, at face value, it is something that you reject, or at least I personally reject to such a hard degree that it's just like an automatic shutdown. It's like when you are attacking people's beliefs and they just completely shut down, double down. Mm-hmm. I mean, it'd be the same thing. So if they took that same lesson and just put a different lens on it, and it wasn't under the guise of something that you would disagree with as like a truth, you're probably going to get a lot more out of it. And if you can like look at these people and what they're trying to tell you and just kind of take like an overhead view of what they're saying to you rather than at face value, extrapolate what they're trying to say, and then maybe apply that, or at least decide that I see your reason, but I don't believe that. And then that reinforces you where you're at. So even if you disagree, it's helpful. If people are saying stuff that they believe that you definitely don't think is true, it at least gives you more data on why you think what you think is true.
Right, exactly. Do you think that we've accidentally trained ourselves to, I keep saying that too, accidentally trained ourselves to argue instantly against things that we don't instantly agree with? So like when they're presented with us, we don't even realize what we're doing, but we're just talking and already arguing before we stop and think like, oh, this is a person's opinion. What they said sounds like this, but I know them. This is their background. Let's look at the situation. What they probably meant was this. When we're just in this reactive state, which our whole society is in, not our whole society is in, it's not allowing us to stop and be like, okay, this is what this person means. So what I'm getting at is young, old, just different type of people are not being able to have conversations because we're not being able to listen to and say, this is what you meant, not here's what I heard from my interpretation. We need to be able to say, okay, maybe I misunderstood you. Is this what you kind of said? I think just the explanation of that, we were talking about conversations and going meta on conversations. I think that's a lot of what the important thing is that you and I are trying to make sure is clear too, is how to have conversations. It's something that I'm like relearning how to do, something that you don't realize it, but someone letting you talk for 3 hours is something that hasn't happened, I don't know, ever in anyone's fucking life. So I get talking and it's like, oh, I have these intricate, things to say. And I actually meant this, but if someone had cut me off 2 minutes ago, or in 2 minutes of what I'm saying, it's going to get construed. So I think just unwrapping, understanding each other for sure.
I think it's hard because we don't use the same language either. Like words don't mean the same things for us and elder folk. Mm-hmm. And what they hold true in the world is not what we hold true in the world. So it's almost like it's like an alien concept to be what they are. So it's very hard to empathize with them because it's just so ludicrous to me that these people hold these beliefs. So you're already starting out from an extremely disadvantaged point because you got to like weave through all of this and try to get something out of it. And then a lot of times people that hold really strong beliefs that they've had for a really long time just don't have a lot of nuance to them, and there's not a lot of extrapolation to be done because this is so incredibly true to them. So they'll say a punchy statement and they're not going to explain it because that's the truth to them. They've never had to explain it. Why would they? Because this is true.
Right. That's what the news has taught. It's kind of a way of thinking now. The news has taught you don't have to know that much to have this point and end all other arguments. Like, nobody can argue it if you just say this sentence. And that's, the news kind of accidentally teaches that too. That we have a lot of people that are caught in that, I think.
The news is a very low ego thing that happens. The news cycle really just keeps you away from like finding who you are and your true self, because it just keeps pulling you back into all this bullshit.
Right.
Pulling you back. Everybody
has news, though. I mean, everybody has a different variation of news or a version of news. But I think that, like, with I'd say we're on the same page. The news we're talking about is, let's say, the on TV.
Mainstream news.
Mainstream news. Yes. Right, yeah. The main things that people are enveloping. It's crazy to see how news it's changed. Like, not that I've been watching news forever. News has never super been my thing. But I don't know. I just think, I was thinking about 9/11. Think about the news that day, right? Like, nobody was probably really watching the news. There's probably a select amount of people, again, I don't know for sure, but there's probably a select amount of people who were watching the morning news that they normally do, but not nearly even half as many as like these. We didn't know about threats so much. Mm-hmm. And then 9/11 happens. I remember, like, I guess I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I was so young. I can imagine that, like, waking up the morning was very different. Like, 9/11 is on the news. Now I can't imagine what catastrophic event would really feel like that. Now, I feel like every day we wake up with breaking news. We wake up with, there's another school shooting. And then there's also this thing when we're like, we need to not talk about school shootings, so it's not a popular thing, so we're not talking about them anymore. It's weird. I wonder, like, the difference between the 9/11 example is just a moment in time. So back then to now, what do you think the repercussions of the changing news will be for the future? I mean, the news is different and weird now.
I think the problem is, like, we're so desensitized to big stuff because the world's so bad, and there's been such a big paradigm shift in how we view news and how the news gets to us because of the financial incentive. And the traditional news is just dying because it's just nobody likes it. It's just shit. So they got to be more, and they got to show you more and more outrage, more and more divisiveness. And the monetary aspect behind this has kind of ruined all these things. And it's actually not allowed us to even feel strongly about any of these travesties that happen. And I would love it if it died off, because these things are extremely important when they happen, and we need to take hard note. But when you have a news cycle in 2 days, like when this story of like a shooting or a tragedy goes on, and in 3 days it's something else, we just are so inundated with not actually feeling the pain of that or the gravity of the situation that it is overwhelming. It's too much information.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's too much information. It's not healthy for us to have too much information like this. It's like, as much as a fellow human being, if I did know that there's starving kids in Africa, that makes my heart hurt. But I shouldn't wake up every morning and see if there's starving kids in Africa. I can't live my life with my heart hurting all the time. Like, we can't know all the drama, the things that we have. Our blood pressure has risen, the things that have, like, caused our body, our chemical fucking pods here to just do all these crazy things just by watching the news. Every hour of news that you've watched of things that actually really weren't relevant to you, they were just kind of passing that time and giving you some in-between information. You texted people, you posted on your Facebook, you did these things because you saw them on the news. Well, they don't actually affect you a lot of times. If you look back at the things that you cared for strongly, that the news told you to care about, the last 3 years, really, what part of your life have they changed? Like, what have they given you? Like, the things that matter to you in your life, have they affected them in the correct way? I think that the 24-hour news stream is not good for our health. It keeps us thinking about the wrong things. You can't constantly, like, if you want to stop being a drug addict, you can't wake up and just look at some drugs on TV every single day and have drugs on the table every single day. If you want to get away from something that's tragedy, something that's bad, you got to insert things that are good. You got to wake up and you got to, like, what do I like today? Not what tragedy is going on. I want to learn how to play guitar, so I'm going to put, like, some light guitar on. I want to learn how to play piano and put light piano on. I want to learn how to sew, so I'm going to watch a sewing station. We can't just, like, keep learning about what's bad. Somebody has to, obviously we have to pay attention to what's going on in the world. You can't be blind to it, but
I've got a fun little experiment for everyone to do. So for the next week or pick a couple days, delete all your social apps, delete all your media apps, and then don't watch TV, and then focus on only stuff that you actually like to do. Like, don't waste any of your time putting any energy into shit that is just wasting time or just taking your conscious awareness away from stuff you really like to do. Because I like to creative write. There's a lot of things that I enjoy doing that I just don't do because I spend time in taking just this shit media that is not helpful at all.
Right.
And just see how you feel. Like, it was profound when I did it.
Didn't you just recently do it again?
Yeah,
right?
About 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Wait, so what exactly did you do? You just deleted the apps, or what did you...
I deleted YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, stopped watching news, and I stopped playing video games. Because I'm like, hey, I like to do a bunch of stuff, and I just don't do it. Like, I like to shoot. I like to do archery. I play D&D, so I do a lot of creative writing.
Right.
Like, I like to play cards with my friends. Like, there's a lot of things that I enjoy doing that I don't do because I'm too busy being distracted. And I feel like this news cycle, like all of this terrible drama that is the real life news, is just so enveloping, and you just get slowly more and more into it. I mean, it really is just a bad drama TV. I mean, I would say it's equally as bad for your brain as just watching trash TV.
It seems like the people who watch it, though, the way that they freaking word things on the news is they make it seem like if you're ignoring this stuff, you're an idiot. You are so stupid if you're ignoring this stuff. So the people who are listening to it are like, of course, I'm the one listening to it. I know people who aren't listening to it. They have no idea what's going on. Like, that's people who watch the news are walking around talking to other people who watch the news saying they have no idea what's going on. But has it made your life better? Is it actually... I don't know. I don't want to just throw all news or you should ignore everything that's going on politician wise, but man, this stuff is fucky right now. It's really weird. There's a lot of anybody can watch any documentaries about what's actually going on here, all the marketing that they're doing, and all the people in charge who are putting certain ads in front of our eyes, all of our attention being purchased, our data, all this shit. The news it's not fabricating real life for the watchers.
It's just not real life. It might be a little bit. It's real. Something is really happening, and they might be talking about a little bit of it. But whatever they spin on it is not real. And you got to look at the financial. There's a financial reason that all these things happen. Like, they just want to get clicks. They want to make you mad, so you come back. Facebook puts ads in front of you that are going to make you upset. They put posts in front of you that are making you upset, so you engage more, so you make more ad revenue. Like, your consciousness is just being sold. Like, your attention is just being sold. On the other side of that, I feel like it is everyone's civic duty to understand what is happening in the world. Like, It's not good to turn a blind eye to the entire world and just live you can just live your quiet, happy life and never engage with it, but it is important to understand these things. But it's also important to understand these things with a lot of nuance and a lot of other factors into consideration other than just what you're being told. Like, you need to be able to form a whole congruent opinion on all these political things based on your philosophical beliefs. And that's why I think philosophy is really important, because it poses a bunch of questions that you need to come to terms with how you feel, and it allows your worldview to be more linear and sound, and then you can have better political opinions because you know what you really believe and you've really actually thought about it. A lot of these people that watch the news have not thought about these things. They turn on TV one day, they believe what their dad did, and now they're upset. But why? Why is a good question. Why am I mad about this? Why is this happening? Is what's happening ethical? Why am I upset? That's a very good question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, people. I think what's happening. I mean, just summarizes the whole news thing. It sucks because I think people are being kind of catapulted into having arguments that aren't really theirs. They're kind of just being used as a mouth, as a talking whatever, like a puppet for all these people's whatever agendas. And this is on all a lot of sides of the whole thing. I mean, even saying, so voting, you're okay, I want to vote. You're who do I vote for? You're what does it mean? Like how do I learn to vote? I'm sure there's plenty of simple things, but there's also there's probably a great answer to that. There's probably you can type in certain things and it's just going to give you the answer. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I think I would love to learn exactly where can we send people to you want to learn how to vote or want to know about the basics of voting? Here you go. But there's so much fucking information, and there's so much information that's biased. There's so much information that has very much headline clicky stuff. There is people with more money than other people who have purchased more of your data than them. There's like, for example, the election, I don't want to dive too far into like the political stuff, but just as a basis of what I'm saying, when I'm saying the whole thing is nutty, is there, if you weren't going to vote, so say that you're someone who like just has cable and you've never voted in your life, but based off of your search history, you're a dickhead. You're an asshole. You're a turd being and just lives by yourself out in the woods, but you have cable. Well, people with money and power know these things, know everything about you because of your data, your search history, your Alexa, your whatever. These people can then say, oh, this guy's never voted for, but he's likely to vote for this candidate. That's our guy right there. That's our candidate. So let's make sure that he particularly gets our ad. 6 miles down the road, there's some liberal, nice, really whatever people, and they're going to get a completely different ad based off of their watch history. So that right there, like the pinpointing, the targeting of people like in their intelligence, people in their like previous beliefs, knowing that information, it changes everything to me. I don't know that I have answers for any of that. Like, that's just craziness, right? So to me, that says like, oh, okay, so clearly the whole thing is broken because that's not, I don't know if it's cheating, but it's something kind of weird. It's way too tactical for an election, because an election, what's the point of it? Like we want.
It's just a bad system, and the debates that they have are not actually debates. They're okay. The debates are hosted by news organizations that are for profit, that have agendas, and they will throw people bad questions on purpose to not get them voted in. Like, this is so obviously just fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just obviously
and this isn't
a game.
One side versus the other side. This is the thing.
The entire thing.
The structure of it is dicky.
This whole system that we have, and we've just allowed it to be ingrained with corporatism, is just ruined everything. But if I'm going to give some tips, if you're going to pick a candidate, go look at who was given the money, and then look at, like, because you can see publicly who their donors are. Go see who's given the money, and then go look at their policies. You say, oh, oil's giving this guy a bunch of money. Oh, he's got a bunch of oil tax cuts. Like, okay, like, these things add up. Like, if you can see who's paying for this, you can see what this person's going to do. Even in regards, if they're not saying these things, you know what they're going to do because something's lining their pockets. So I would say go seek that out. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but
it's hard to seek that out though, man, because you start going into these rabbit holes, and it's just all this. I don't want to use the word fake news on my goddamn podcast, but fake news.
It's pretty much all fake news.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is it's all fake news. It's all fucky. But so here's the thing: is I would never. I'm not trying to advise people to not vote. I'm saying we need to learn way more. So like something Shane and I had a conversation with about, and then I was just bringing back up. I would love to. I'm not super savvy on the whole voting process. I want to like go through it, and I want to go through it out loud on this podcast. I want to try to offer not too strong opinions, because I know like I crack my fair share amount of jokes about like the Trump thing, but it's not so much about him and like him as a person as much as it's, again, this whole thing is just ridiculous. Like look at what happened, But anyway, I think what it is important to know is because a lot of people, like, let's say the far left, the crazy people, are getting to this conversation, Spencer, and they're like, this whole thing is fucked, and they're doing this and blah blah, and then they're going outside and they're saying, this is bad, man, we need to change this. Like, people don't talk about these things or notice that, like, hey, we're on a fucking rock hurling through space, and to survive and to be successful and not kill each other and not die of starvation, we have to have culture, we have to have society. This is something that needs to happen. And unless you, a person on the side of the street, just yelling and complaining about it or what other people are doing, unless you have a better idea, it's kind of like what's happening right now. So I think that speaking of things like the structure of how everything is and the entirety of all this is super important. But like, we're not trying to just fucking throw it all under the bus and say it sucks or just complain about it. I think that it's nice to speak about, and like, I don't know, like Spencer, you and I, we always get going down far rabbit holes of like, even, far-fetched ideas like, man, what if like we didn't have a president and we just had like 7 dudes who, like it's fun to extend like your what if philosophy from, take your conversations into those areas and extend like, I wonder what could we do? Like, I don't know everything, but what could we do? And have those conversations with your friends instead of like here's exactly what they're doing and what I'm doing, and this is wrong, this is right, and blaming people. And
you got to get away from status quo bias. Just because it is like this now doesn't mean that's how it should be. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people are like, we're a capitalist nation. Like, our government this is how it is. This is how it's going to work, and we can't change it at all.
Very true.
This is American. Okay, well, that's pretty regressive, and maybe we should think that this is a pretty shit system, and everyone can see it, and maybe we should change it, and maybe you should talk about that.
Yeah,
like, why? And
then, but there is also a lot of, we kind of hit a dead end with that, because then it loops back around to a lot of people's religions. Like this one, a lot of people, I don't even want to dive too far into religion anymore, really, on this one. But it's hard because you hit a lot of speed bumps. But I think the point of it is being able to have open conversation and open dialogue, in being able to really understand, like, let your brain wrap itself around that, like, there's 7.6 billion motherfuckers in the world, and they know a lot of different things 100% in their heart, the same way that you 100% in your heart know them. Mm-hmm. So what the fuck, man? Things are clearly, like, it's okay that people have different beliefs. There's so many different beliefs, but when they're stopping progress and stopping all these things,
it's frustrating. But we must, like, if you go out in the world and start having conversations, a lot of people are going to stonewall the shit out of you. Yeah. You just got to have good faith in it, and then just keep going out and doing it. Like, a lot of these people that don't have the mindset of, hey, let's have an open conversation, they just want to tribe up and attack you. Mm-hmm. That's not going to end well. Like, you're not going to have a good conversation with people, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to, because you're never going to get anywhere if you don't try, and you're never going to get anywhere if you just attack people, because they're going to double down. It's going to make it worse. So if you really want to espouse your opinion, you think it's very good, you should have a very nice, mm-hmm. quiet conversation about it, and then not get upset when people disagree with you.
Yeah. You're totally right, but I think also taking it on your own, take it where you want it. Like me, I'm very interested in everything, and I want to explore all realms of possibilities, and like I want to remain in disbelief and like learn what you think, but I don't think that I'm like, why I'm owed your opinion, so I should invite someone who has a very opposite opinion of me for them to come like yell at me on my podcast, or mm-hmm. or somebody like if there's somebody in your life that their opinion is vastly different from you, but they don't understand the conversation skills. They think that things are all debate. They think that things are like facts, and facts negate everything that you just said. It's like
whatever facts is for you, and where'd you get them? Like, there's
having civilized conversation,
and that's not a champion belief, because you want to be your dumb lizard brain just wants to dominate people and win. I want my words to beat your words. Fuck you, my idea's better. And and not a lot of people aren't like that, because that's just how we are at our core. Like, you have to learn how to not be like that, because we just come out the box like that. So most people aren't going to be very helpful, but we should at least try.
Yeah, we should definitely try. Just meet new people and see what they think, and let them just say what they think and learn about it.
And you can learn something from everyone. If you talk to everyone like they know something that you don't, you're going to get a lot more out of conversations.
Mm-hmm. I mean, most of the time they do know something you don't. If you really think about it.
Oh, they always do. Everyone knows something you don't know. Right. That's just, I would go on a limb and say that's probably a fact.
It's definitely a fact. Like, they know their mother's name. You don't know their mother's name. Boom. One thing they don't know. That's something they could teach you. Oh, you could have just learned someone else's mother's name. You missed out on it because you were being a dickhead.
Well, maybe they got lessons they want to teach you too. And maybe at least you can learn how not to do stuff too from people. Like, if this is somebody that you really think is really shit in the bed, like, maybe you can just learn, oh, this is like, you did something bad and I learned a lesson from it. Now you win. So even if you really don't like this person, they really believe stuff that you don't like, you can at least learn something.
But when you're too busy being right, you miss out on lessons.
Yes.
When you're so enveloped in this person is an idiot and this person is this, and your opinion of someone and I'm right and you're wrong, you don't have any room in your head or in your intake right here of taking in them teaching you anything.
Yeah.
You're too busy filling it in with them being wrong.
There's a problem with this, though, because a lot of people make a lot of points in very bad faith. Like, they just are saying stuff to, like, just, like, dominate you in some way. And they're
win.
Yeah, they're making bad faith arguments. Like, this, whatever they're saying is not coming from a place of kindness or empathy. Mm-hmm. or a reason, and they don't actually believe these things. They're just saying these things to be hurtful, or they're saying these things to own you, quotes.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, conversation is something that, language conversation, it's definitely been changed and kind of like weirdly stripping away in strange ways. Obviously just because technology, the internet, social media, texting, like our shortening of text, our shortening of words. I think I've talked to you before. I notice when I'm writing like if I'm writing a book, like, this is a chapter for a book that I want to author one day. It's very different person that is writing than when I'm typing on my Facebook wall, or especially when I'm tweeting. Like the misinterpretation of language that has happened just within our own selves. Like sometimes we changed what we really mean, but it's definitely changed. Language has kind of broadened without any explanation of it, and now we're all trying to navigate that. It's super weird, but I think it's important for people to understand that different words and different terminology and stuff aren't always the same to you and another person. We have to look inside, like, okay, give it a second. What does this dude really mean? What is he actually saying? Not the exact words. Well, this word means this, so you said this word, so now you're right and I'm wrong. We got to listen to what they're saying, not the words that they're saying.
Intent is important, but you also, before people get their guard up, before this gets heated, you can just define terms. They say, like, faith is, like, for religious people say the word faith, but it means a very different thing to a lot of people.
Right.
I was like, hey, like, what does this mean to you? Like, would you define this for me, please? Or, like, you're in a political debate, ask them to define a word, because usually if you've been living in a different bubble than they have, this word holds way different connotations and denotations to them. So if you can understand how they mean that word, you can definitely communicate with them better, because we're saying the same words, but they just don't mean the same things.
Dude, I think that's something we should really like dig a hole, like this part of the podcast. That is actually a pretty big deal. The misinterpretation that we're having of the exact same words. Like, we are so in our heads that we don't realize that we don't know. Like 2 years ago, if someone was talking to me about the word spirit or whatever, I would be like, that's something for them. That's something that they feel, blah, blah, blah. But like now that I've felt my own versions of spirituality and whatever that fucking means to me, like I'm able to know what they mean, and so I can have more compassion with them. So that's just something like through my own experience that I'm making a connection, obviously, with that. But I think that entire versions of words, faith is another good one. The word ego, like our first podcast, we defined ego. I think that being super cocky and super confident, all of us, a lot of people our age especially, knowing that we know words, and we hear someone say something, so we take it out of context because we're like, oh, they're saying this about me, but we're forgetting, we're not taking that person into consideration. We're not taking, oh, what did they actually mean? What's their knowing of this word? Because I mean, if you're a 30-year-old man and you've read a ton of books, and there's a 7-year-old girl who's read 4 books, and you guys are having an argument about what faith means, the word faith, what the definition of it is, it's going to be different. You guys are arguing different points, but you both think you're wrong. Well, there's chances that a lot of times you're arguing as the 7-year-old, and you don't need to be arguing at all. You need to just be like, let's get on the same page of what we're talking about, this same word, right? I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, words have to mean stuff, and we need to at least have them mean the same thing to communicate. A big thing in philosophy, almost every philosopher will, when they're doing a lot of writings, they'll be very, very, very meticulous in describing what these words mean to them and exactly how they're using them to deliver a more eloquent, concise point. And we just throw words around. We also really devalue words as well.
Like we want to condense them.
Yes. The power of words is really devalued. You see when people, like younger kids will oftentimes say a lot of bigoted words, like just as jokes, because they just, I mean, words just don't mean anything to you. Like, these are just fun words that you're saying. But once you just get a little older and you start to realize, like, these things are really potent. Like, these words have been used in very bad ways. Like, these are powerful. And then you start to think about it, and you're like, oh, maybe, like, everything I say is pretty potent if you make it that way.
It is.
In order for society to function, words have to mean stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a super big thing. I mean, in little kids knowing more words, but like knowing of them, but not really, really grasping them. That's got to be like not super great, it's got to be a little more confusing than anything. I think
Dude, language is fucking difficult.
Yeah, language is so difficult. And I think that it's kind of being a little bit swiped out from underneath us. Like, and if we're not careful, if we're not, we can't just shorten everything. We can't just condense everything. So if you're like, hey man, give me a 5-word sentence on what religion is. You can't do that. That doesn't say, you can give them a 5-word sentence, but now you have just given your view of religion on a 5-word sentence. You just put a box around this thing. And religion is just the word that came to mind, but like any of these words that people want to condense so much. Ego, for example, like that's a word that, like, every time we talk about it, it seems like it's like we're defining it from a little bit different of a stance because it's talking about something. I mean, think about consciousness. Like, I read Conscious by Annika Harris, and like I read the book and I'm like, man, I feel like I still don't know if I could fully describe what consciousness is to someone if they asked me. So we have to remember how complicated language is, and what a lot of times we're doing here in today's world is fucking fighting people over misinterpretations of language and misinterpretations of the dude wasn't able to explain what he actually meant because he didn't have 17 hours to tell you his point. But we need to work with what we're given, Yeah,
there's a double-edged sword of that, though, because a lot of people don't even know why they believe stuff. So when you get them to explain it, it's just kind of a train wreck because they haven't actually had to think about it at all.
But that's the thing. If you're explaining something you realize that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, be like, actually, I think I'm stupid.
Yeah. Well, okay, maybe I just don't know this thing, and it's super okay to not know stuff. But I will say that I would really like it if more people that had strong beliefs held them for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I think that yes, we definitely need to give people a lot more leeway in explaining the stuff that they need to. And stuff like Twitter has really ruined speech because that 140-character limit is not conducive to a nuanced, complete explanation of anything. It's got to be short and punchy and memey, and that's what's rewarded.
And if it insults them perfectly to the people who are listening to it, then you get more likes. And
it's just got to slap, but it's not helpful.
It's got to be bass boosted.
Yes.
Cool, man. Let's not dive too much farther on that. We will in coming episodes. These are things. Oh man, I'm in the chair that just randomly sinks down all the time. See you later. I would love to talk a little bit more about philosophy, though. So the bio that I've like that yours is armchair philosopher, and then mine is a junkyard philosopher. I just enjoy. I mean, I don't know what I claim to know, and I don't really know what I know yet, but I enjoy philosophy of all aspects. I will say my favorite, I gotta say Alan Watts and Carl Jung, probably my top two. Alan Watts is like a pretty easy, obvious one. Like anybody who likes anything in the realm of what we like usually is into some sort of Alan Watts. If you don't know who Alan Watts is, AlanWatts on YouTube or Spotify, and people have done some really cool shit with his lectures. You'd probably recognize his voice. It's just really nice to listen to. I like to go on walks and just put him in the headphones. Carl Jung is what was he? Scottish?
I don't know much about him personally. I just know about the test and a lot of his teachings.
Oh, yeah. He's dude. Yeah, he's great. Those are my top two. Who are your top two philosophers? If you have to say,
that's rough. Okay, so this is something
you got to narrow it down to two as well.
I've done like a lot of research on, and I've done a lot of reading. Me and one of my friends, he wants to be a philosophy professor. So
beautiful.
And I work out with him every night, so we probably spend 3 hours talking about philosophical points almost every single day.
Well, it's cool because now I'm going to make you bring him with you on the podcast.
I told him I want him to come here.
It'd be so cool.
He's great.
If he'd be down, that really would be cool. We'll talk about that later.
My two favorite. Fuck. I would say.
Also, I apologize for the noise you're hearing. I'll try to edit it out as best I can, but I had a little bit of a basement flood, and it appears that they're fixing the pipes upstairs right now. So, sorry, Spencer. Continue, buddy. Philosophers.
So rough because this encompasses so many different like parts of belief. Politically, I really like the Frankfurt School of Thought, which is basically just all the communist guys. I really like all of them as philosophers. They're great. If you hate getting dicked by capitalism and you think your life sucks because you're selling your time,
Marxism,
go look up the Frankfurt School of Thought and just listen to their ideas.
Okay, can you explain what it is? I'm not sure.
The Frankfurt School of Thought is a group of people around when Marx was alive. and they just kind of had a lot of ideas that were pretty communist, and they did a lot of poking at capitalism and like political structures and whatnot.
Right.
And that's kind of what they believed. I really like them. There's a podcast that does excellent exposés on all of these people that is very unbiased. It's called Philosophize This. If you want to,
I think that I've heard their stuff. I think they even have YouTube short videos too.
It is excellent. It's very, very good, and it's very unbiased, very educational.
Philosophize This.
Yes,
cool.
And then Immanuel Kant, I like a lot. I don't like his view on metaphysics. This is like pretty deep in the weeds because you would have to like know a lot about what he's saying. But everything else that he believes, I really enjoy. Who is my favorite philosopher? David Hume's great as well.
I can't think of who that is.
He's the ultimate skeptic. He's like this jolly Scottish man who was just the biggest skeptic, but he was always happy. Like a traditional mark of a philosopher is like they're this sad incel who just like never sees the light and is just internally tormented. But he's like this well-spoken Scottish man who's all jolly and enjoys everything. But he was just like a really, really strong skeptic.
Huh, incredible. Imagine if Steven Pinker was like, but what all he writes is just actually just, he's like, yeah, everything sucks. He's like, I know I talk about all this stuff and everything is jolly and great and we're very optimist, but realistically it's just a disaster.
Dude, most of the thinkers are really sad. They're very, very torn up.
I mean,
inside.
Okay, because so thinking about these things, the average person versus a philosopher, what does a philosopher think about? They think about this, like what everything is, right? Okay, well, let's define that. Let's back up. Philosophy. Let's define philosophy.
Okay, I'm just going to interject real quick. 2 of my favorite grandstanding ideas come from a man, he's French, named Albert Camus. Okay, he does absurdism, which is basically like the world. Like there's just nothing, like this is just complete chaos, and you must be happy in the idea that nothing has meaning, and that's beautiful and freeing.
Everything is absurd.
Yes,
everything is absurd.
That guy was my jumping off point into doing all of this like learning, and I really, really, really enjoy his work. So if you want to follow that,
it's kind of a catapult into sadness, though, if you're not careful.
Yes, so that's kind of the problem because nihilism is what is before that, and nihilism is like the world means nothing. Like I'm sad and depressed, and my life is meaningless, and a lot of nihilists run back to religion. Because it's comfort and it's this hard belief that your life has meaning, but if you just take one step further,
I know, or even hold on to that, like that feeling where you don't have your feet are off the ground. If you just hold on to that for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, life gets really fun. I'm just saying. I really like discovering philosophies and being like, oh man, okay, my brain is unstructuring right now. I didn't realize that. I love it. It's like my favorite. It's so great to just unfold what you know to learn something new.
And you must have someone else to bounce it off too, because I have more questions than answers now than even when I started. Like I am way more puzzled. Like I spend every day toiling over like ethically how should I treat people. Like if these are my worldviews, like there's just so much nuance and there's no answer, and it's so fulfilling to just work over it and think.
I know. And go a whole day holding on to a belief. You're like, man, I think that this might be like the thing. And you're walking around and you're having like profound insights about it. And then 2 days later, you're like, oh, I forgot I even thought that was the thing. You stumble upon these like awakenings is a strange word, but it's kind of what it is. Like,
it's just a realization.
It's a realization.
You just have more. You've been presented with a worldview or an idea that you don't currently have, and you get to test it with yours and see if it's good. If this is better, if this is a better worldview than I currently have, I'm going to adopt it, and it will allow you, if you're open-minded, to constantly shift and evolve your worldview. And if you do enough studying, you can have a perfectly congruent worldview, and then you know how to treat people, you know how to act.
You can understand that they have different worldviews too. You can really understand.
Yeah, yes, and you're much more open to ideas because of this.
Do you think that do you think the average listener like has really had a life altering like worldview? Like so let's say a traumatic a person who's gone through a traumatic time in their life, they've had a life altering view. Okay, so you, for example, like you talk about how like your life has been pretty like it's not too bad, but like you are able to see that that life is more than just this safe bubble of whatever you've created and whatever you've grown up with. You've challenged that and you've explored the rest of the world. Like you've let the ground you walk on be shaky because it's like a what if thing. I think a lot of other people say a worldview change, like being able to actively change who you are. So a lot of people, here's a good example. Sorry, I was flirting around it. When you're 40 years old, a lot of people are like, oh, I thought I knew everything when I was 25, and they'll give you some examples of whatever. They're like, I was a fucking idiot when I was 25. Like, they say things like that. I think that while we're 25, there's a lot of people who aren't willing to admit that when they're 40, it's likely that's going to happen, or when they're whatever this age, it's going to happen. Like, what you think now is probably going to drastically change. Philosophy, like, you have stuff like that, like, every day. The more you learn about these things, the more you're like, oh, I think maybe I believe that. It's like a flip switch where like, stuff just man, I wish I could, like, think of like a movie scene that just, like, moves. The person is still there, but the whole setting shifts. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it feels when your worldview shifts.
Yeah, you get a new lens.
Yeah. Okay, so say you had to describe that to a fucking robot, someone who doesn't understand, like, or someone who has never felt, they've lived in a cave their whole life, whatever, I don't know. They've never had a profound shift in changing what they believe in.
I would say if anyone's ever left or gone to a religion, you know what it's like. Definitely. I mean, it's just a complete reworking of how you view the world and the values that you hold. So I, in high school, was a very empirically driven, just like complete rational. Like, if their numbers don't support it, I don't support it. Like, all this woo-woo bullshit, I'm just not going to accept it because this is not the real world.
For sure.
And I took everything at face value, and I denied everything that wasn't that. And slowly, as I grew up, started thinking about things. And I wasn't a very empathetic person. I didn't look at things from other people's point of view. I always questioned everything, but it was to be right. And slowly growing up and just doing research on how to think, and all these other people that have been the great thinkers of our times, I guess, and seeing how they think and bouncing off how I am, and then slowly adopting these things has completely changed who I am as a core being, but it didn't happen very quickly, so I can't really attest to what it's like. It was a very slow growth, and I would encourage people to not completely shatter their own world.
Yeah,
maybe slowly get into this. Your ego is very you need to protect it to some degree. You can't just completely be blown up. Like, you got to slowly challenge everything you believe. If you challenge everything you believe at once, it's going to be really overwhelming.
And that is something, seriously, though, if you are exploring a lot of these things, a lot of, like, different philosophies, a lot of psychology, when you start to understand things, like, more in depth, so that's something with psychology. Philosophy is right there in hand, but psychology, as I start reading these psychology books and exploring more into that world, I start realizing, like, you start thinking about when you move your right arm, you're like, why did I move my right arm in this way? And you start connecting things to different things. That's a terrible example about the right arm, but you start looking at things from a different lens because your lens is now more intelligent. You're upgrading your hardware here. Like, you're able to look at more things. It does get shaky if you're not careful. Definitely if you, like, dive pretty deep. A lot of, like, the people healing, like, childhood traumas and doing, like, hypnotism stuff, and a lot of the stuff that is in this world is a little shaky, but it's super exciting. So, but if you feel yourself like, man, this feels uncomfortable, like, don't retreat from it, but give yourself enough self-love to be like, let's kind of explore something that I enjoy. Let's not watch this next documentary about AI and what is reality and all this sort of stuff. Take a step back and find your sanity before you go exploring into it.
I mean, there's an ego whiplash with all things too. Whenever you're trying to change yourself, like, your life's like a guitar string, and like all things, your body's trying to achieve homeostasis or stay at a baseline, and it realizes that you've survived where you're at, so we should stay here, because if we changed all, maybe we won't survive. Even if it's for the better, your body wants to hold on there. So when you strum this guitar string, it goes up and it goes down. You get that pull down effect, and that, if you challenge too many things at once, it's going to be very overwhelming. You're going to end up worse off than you were before. So you just slowly, like, introduce new ideas. Like, find one school of thought to tackle. Like, how do I feel about, like, being alive, or, like, the existence in general? Like, do I think that there's a God? Like, do I think that the world is just this chaotic mess that accidentally happened?
And you're asking these things and you don't have to have an answer. You can wonder.
No,
right?
you don't have an answer ever.
That's the thing. I think that's the thing is people, they say, I don't know, and they end the conversation there. They're like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I was just on a hike, and I found myself, I noticed that I was doing it. For minutes, I was literally just looking at the mountains in the sky, and one position wasn't moving, and I was just kept in this state of wonder. Like, I wonder what, man, like, what is this? Like, all these things I've learned, like, you know, I don't know. I wonder what this is. It's so interesting. And you start noticing that it's just beautiful is the thing. Is wonder leads to beauty, man. It really does. Is because you don't know. In remaining in not knowing, remaining in disbelief, getting yourself there is great. But remaining in disbelief is just super important. You don't have to know. You can just wonder.
Something that I cherish a lot is the fact that all the philosophical ideas that I hold are not truisms, and that they are subject to change, and I will never know for certain. So I get to spend my whole life wondering. Mm-hmm. Getting an answer is so fucking boring.
I know.
Well, I just don't want to have an answer. Yeah, what am I going to do? I just get to ponder this my whole life, and then through this, I get to be a more efficient, effective, affectionate person. That's excellent. And the pursuit of knowledge or thought, even if it's not what I believe, like at least exploring these ideas to allow yourself to view the world in a more wholesome manner that is more... Like, you can back up your ideas. Like, hey, I feel this way because of this and this and this. Right. And this is how I see things. It's very, even if I respect that a lot, I respect people that they have strong opinions and they have all these ideas, but they've got a very, very deep-rooted reason why, and at least some kind of rationale to getting there. It's when people haven't questioned anything and they believe things very strongly that it's very upsetting.
Right.
It's like, hey, how can you have these strong opinions? You've never explored anything.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you want to explore them?
It feels so good. It is very frightening, and I understand that I just have the perfect personality set up to really seek these things out, and a lot of people just aren't going to want to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think it will be very helpful for everyone to just maybe question what they currently believe. Whatever you believe the strongest, you should question it a little bit. Just poke at it. Like, why do I believe this?
But not to say, like, I think they're trying to tell me that this is wrong and it's not the absolute truth. It's like, no, it's because life is very wonderful when you question things. Life is a journey. I mean, dude, this is at all times you can be on a loading screen of the coolest game ever and just choose what adventure you're going to go down, like what character you're going to be. And if you're just stuck on one character the whole time, you know, if you forget that you can press B and go back to the fucking loading screen sometimes, you know, like you're going to get, maybe you're super good at being a swordsman, but you can try the archer out, you know?
Yeah, you got this, like, magical thing between your ears that you can flex all the time, just like a muscle, and if you don't flex it, you got to push all the buttons, man. You got to think about stuff, go seek new ideas out. I mean, maybe they just reaffirm what you believe. Great. Maybe they don't. No matter what, you are in a better spot. So if you never seek out any of this information, you're just going to... I mean, I think you're just going to suffer, really. Uh-huh. Even silently, even though you don't know that you're currently doing it, not... seeking out nuance in life and new ideas and all these wonderful things that go along with just like sitting and thinking and pursuing these ideas. You're just shorting yourself, because we don't live for very long, and you're really just gonna believe. You're just gonna decide at 20 that this is what you believe, and you're never gonna test it again, and then you're gonna go sell your time to work, and then that's it. You're just gonna work and die. You're never gonna enjoy the little finer things in life.
This is for sure. Like the stories of afterlife. Like I don't know. I mean,
dude, you're here now. Why are you worrying about that? You got a mental playground. You got a whole world full of people that have already thought about stuff. That you can go play around with these toys. You can go play around with these ideas. It's so true, dude.
Life is It's a choose your own adventure. I mean, really think about it. It's in life, we think that it's always just looking for the most happiness, but it's actually just choosing what struggles you want. Like what pain do you want to endure? What suffering are you willing to take on in this 100 years of life, or however long you're going to live? It's like, we think it's like find something that's safe and just hunker down. And that was a way of living for a long time, but like, we're safe, we have food, we can explore. Like it's not, you don't have to just focus on surviving now. We can wonder about it and explore.
Like, if the ideas that you hold so strongly and have never questioned. So, okay, if you're a caveman, you get all your caveman friends, you get the pointy stick, you find the cave with the one entrance. Mm-hmm. All the ideas that you hold really strongly and have never questioned are sitting at the back of that, and you're just protecting them. stabbing everything else that comes in. But maybe you should wander out of that cave and go look what's out there.
And you're like, oh shit, there's way more world. I didn't even realize I was in a cave. This is what I always talk about with the maze. A lot of times people have their back against the wall in their maze, and sometimes I feel like the conversations that I'm trying to have are above the maze. That I'm above the maze saying, hey dummies, like, remember, like, you put 4 quarters in and you're in the maze game, like, and then they're gonna be like, oh yeah, shit, okay, we forgot that we were in the maze. We've been here for years. And they're just gonna drop their sword and climb out of the maze and just come hang out with me.
I love it when you say the maze. I think it's such an awesome analogy for just like life and thinking and whatnot, because it's so easy to just believe your stuff and barrel down in. But hey, maybe we should look at this stuff.
Yeah, man. Take a look. Like, okay, yes, you're focus on your fight. Focus on your as you're swinging your sword, and you're in the heat of the moment. You know, like, experience that and feel that. But then also remember, like, okay, wait, oh yeah, I'm on Earth, and that's in the galaxy, and that's in the universe, and I'm just a human being, which has to do with evolution and all these things. I don't know, probably not add evolution to that story, but I just slid down again in this old chair.
If anyone ever finds any philosophical ideas,
a new chair,
that they just want somebody to talk about, definitely comment in one of these. I would love to go off on one. I just don't really want to get into the weeds with stuff that people aren't interested in, because what I'm interested in is probably not what other people are interested in. So.
Well, that's okay though. I mean, you're my good friend, and this is my podcast, so we get to talk about what we're interested in, but also, you know, in a supportive way to teach other people who, if they're interested in it too, they can kind of know a little bit, and we can compare ideas with it too.
It's all about discussion.
It's all about discussing.
You just find someone to talk about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is I'm like, as much as I used to be like so afraid of comments, right? Like, you have to tiptoe. So over the last few years on Facebook and YouTube and all these, Twitter especially, comments just get where people find something that they disagree with and they try to rip you apart, and then it becomes this argument. And comments are weird, like, because we never decided, like, hey guys, here's what we do with comments. Like, we never fully decided that, right? And same with likes. It's like, do you like this product, or do you dislike this product when you give it a thumbs down, or do you dislike the video about the product? You know, so I think that I have been a little bit afraid of comments, but it's something I definitely want to be loud about on this podcast, is like, hey man, you can kind of get a gist for what we're talking about here. I'm not claiming to be anything. I'm just going to be honest about what we're conversating about. But if you think that there's something that would spark a good convo that you would like to listen to, or you're like, man, I think that these guys might know a little bit about, let's say, Buddhism, let's say whatever, but meditation, maybe they can teach me. Or, hey, I can't seem to meditate. I'm not trying to like say that I'm some sort of Dr. Phil here, but if you can comment, well, we're going to read them, and we're going to...
You can message me and tell me why I'm wrong about stuff too. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yes. Yeah, I don't. What I'm emphasizing there is I don't want to do the debate thing. I'm not trying to say these are my beliefs and we're arguing. Like, that is not how we fucking have conversation. That's how the internet has started working, and I'm just going to openly say, like, I'm not participating in that shit. I'm not trying to participate in everything being a debate and I'm right and you're wrong. I just think that we need to relearn how to have conversation and remember that this is the internet, and there's human beings on the other side of that conversation. So imagine you had to wake up every morning and wave hi to your neighbor, but you just talk shit to them on their avatar, to their fucking YouTube comments. It's just ridiculous. We're forgetting that we're in the maze, and comments have gotten weird. But anyway, I'm hoping to have good comments.
Dude, social media is the ultimate maze. I was looking at my Instagram, like, this is just not an accurate representation of who I am at all. Like, if anyone approached me and then just wanted to talk about one of these things, I actually just wouldn't enjoy it. Not even a little bit. Like, 'cause this is just not who I am, and it's not who I want to talk about.
Right.
But it's in my past what I posted to just get the fun clicks. Like, this is my highlight reel. Look at me doing all this stuff. But this is just not who I am at all. But to 1,000 people that follow me, this is exactly who I am, especially if they don't know me.
God, that's so strange.
So I'm really at a crossroads. Like, do I just take everything down and just start posting some weird abstract stuff? Like, what do I do with this weird machine? I have no idea how to use it.
Well, here's the thing, man, is you are, with that sentence, you're kind of, it almost seems like you're like fighting against something that's like you don't have to fight against. It's like, you don't have, your Instagram doesn't have to represent exactly who you are in its entirety. Like, thinking it ever did, that was our problem. That, like, I was looking at my Instagram, for example. When Instagram first came around, it just had the coolest filters, and filters at the very beginning were like, they just weren't around. And I remember I had Instagram. My first few photos, I think, were like me taking for Facebook. I wanted to post them on Facebook, but I wanted a cool filter. So I used Instagram, posted there, and then copied and posted to Facebook. So that's what the start of Instagram was. And I want to say that I looked the other day and I have like 669 posts. Like I've never deleted posts.
Nice.
And I was thinking about it. I was like, I wonder if I should do it, because I've noticed over the last couple of years what people are doing, artists especially, is they're deleting everything except for like 4 main posts. And it's cool, it's artistic, and I get it, because it's kind of like your artistic board a lot of the times for Instagram. But it's also kind of like, man, are we doing that because we're under the impression that people are going to your page to get the whole you at once? Because that's not ever going to happen. That's, you know, like you could look through all 669 posts and you're not going to understand who I am at all. You're going to know some things that I've been through, and some things that I wore a mask through, some things that I really went through, maybe some of my friends. But there's so much more in depth about me or about anybody than just their social media, right?
Yeah. Well, what the fuck is this thing for anyways? Like, why do we even use this? Like,
we haven't figured that out. We're just doing it because it's cool. We haven't been like, oh yeah, we're drinking a lot of beer. We haven't realized that, like, why are we drinking beer?
You know? Like, why am I using this? And every time, I mean, you're not even you that you were 5 seconds ago. So all these pictures are someone that is not, I mean, it's quite literally not me anymore. Yeah. So it can never be an accurate representation of who you are, and I don't really know what to do with it.
So what is it really? Like what, not what do we want it to be? What is it? Like, as it stands right now, what is it?
For Instagram, for a while, okay, I probably have 100 posts. Probably the first 75 is just like a, hey, look at me doing the thing. Mm-hmm. I want to be the guy with the nice car, the big muscles.
You weren't aware that you were doing these things, though. It's not like, and it's not like you were like, oh, I totally sucked, and I was just like posting pictures of my bicep, and like I really just wanted attention. It's like, it's just the nature of ego and the nature of human being.
And then I started telling myself, I'm not posting here for anyone but myself. It's just to catalog things. But that's kind of bullshit too, because if I just wanted to catalog stuff, I would leave them in my photos. So this whole thing is just a, hey, look at me, I want clicks in general. And I don't think there's really a way you can escape that unless you're on there to help people. So I don't really know what I would use it for at this point. Well,
I don't know. It's hard because I've noticed. Have I told you about like what I've been doing? Like, I'm back on social media, and I'm kind of like, it's like a little experiment for me. I tell you about the last time. A little
trial run.
Yeah, I've like. This may not make much sense to some people, but like taking a year off from social media, I would say I pretty thoroughly broke like my addictive qualities towards it, and I was like super into my phone. I just loved Instagram and shit. But like now that I'm back on it for the release of the podcast, like I'm going to be on it through December or whatever, I've been kind of like letting myself pick up my phone whenever and pull it out whenever. And I just find myself just like, I'm refreshed. I post something and 5 minutes later I pull my phone and I refresh, see if I got any likes and all these things. And it makes me stop. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why, I claim to be doing this podcast because it means so much to me. Why am I refreshing this post? And I'm like, oh yeah, because like, as human beings, we have addictive dopamine tendencies, and we have certain ways of getting things, and the cell phone is a shortcut to get a lot of those things really fast. And our brains are like, I trained my brain that way real hardcore for many years. So it's just funny to like kind of let myself rip, so to say, and watch that I'm just like this dopamine, social media hungry, just like trying to consume more already. I think that everybody needs to be more aware of what your phone is doing to you, and then just say like, wait, why am I doing any of this? Why? What is it?
Yeah, and when people delete posts because they didn't get enough likes,
that's something that's like that. Really think about that. Like that's something that's rough. That's you shouldn't feel that way about yourself. Like if you feel that way about yourself, I want you to like not feel bad about that, but think about it. Just think like, man, that's something that, say a young kid or like a young, like naive kind of mind would do it. Like, well, there's a part of that still runs a lot of our life and a lot of us. So you're a 30-year-old man and you posted a post and only got 5 likes in an hour and you hate that, so you deleted it. Well, that's not something that like the real you, a real 30-year-old man would really like actually care about, right? Like really think about that. That's a younger part of you. That's something that you think that you're not getting in another area of your life. In your mind, your intelligence sees this shortcut, this way to get it, and it's doing that. So just take a step and see that it's doing those things.
It's funny because you probably don't give a shit about what the people that do like it think about you at a face value. Like if you were to meet one of these people you barely know, like you actually don't care about their opinion at all, about how they think about you, because they don't really know you. Yeah, and that's funny because people have internet friends that they don't talk to in real life. Dude, we were kind of like that for a while. I'd see you at the gym, and I'm like, we talk all the time on Instagram, and it'd be like, ha ha ha. Like, we definitely know each other for sure, but we can't communicate at all.
Well, so that's something that but we can have out loud conversation, because that's something, again, that's another thing with social media. It's never been addressed. Are these your real friends? Are these your like whatever? And a lot of times it's not, but a lot of times it's just like, so you and I, this is something that, like, we don't have a word for this, but we get along very well. I very much enjoy your company. I very much enjoy talking to you on Instagram. But for me, going to the gym was a very huge, difficult mental task for me. It was hard. Sometimes I would get self-conscious talking to people. Sometimes it would pull me out of my like mental focus. So as much as I know people and want to talk to them, that doesn't mean that I could always be who I need to be at the gym. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the thing, is a lot of times people... That's a new thing. I don't know like what to even put words on that. Like, so that's something where I can't show up and be the Jake Ryans that you see on social media, the Jake Ryans that like you've known most of the time. I couldn't be him when I was at the gym, right? But you know now, and you knew probably even then, honestly, but that like it doesn't mean that I don't actually care about you, mm-hmm. and it means that I actually only want you on social media for likes or something. It's just something that's weird that none of us, we're kind of assuming that these things mean this when you do this on social media, but we're not taking a look at like, what your craziness? That doesn't make any sense, you know?
We had a very odd relationship before we became really close.
You and I?
Yeah, it was very weird.
Oh man, okay, what do we got?
So we just have a lot of very, like, all our close friends, like your close friends are my close friends, but we never actually really connected, like, until probably like a year ago.
Yeah. And
I was like, I'd be at your house, and it was always like we're both attracted to being just the guy, and there can't be two guys. And I always felt like not like a weird friction, but it was always odd. It was just like an always odd interaction.
That's crazy. It's crazy to me because I didn't feel that even 1%.
Really?
Like, I was so unaware of that. I had no idea. I was literally just probably thinking about myself that 100% of that time. Like, I was probably like trying to do my performance. I was trying to be such an outward chameleon that, and that's the thing too, is like a lot of people, like when I talk about being an introverted person, a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? You're like one of the most extroverted people ever. And I'm like, yeah, mm-hmm. you know, but I mean, and you know that now, but man, it's so interesting. We just assume that the other person is like maybe feeling the same thing, and there's some sort of like, not tension, but
yeah, it was very interesting because I felt like you couldn't be you with me, and I couldn't be me with you, and it was like this weird. It's like you're like the ultimate showman. You're like just like the guy. You're just being the guy right now, and it was very odd. It was very odd because I am so used to just really connecting with people, especially if I already have friends with them. Right. There was always like this weird distance between you and I.
Maybe it's like the masks get in the way. Like, yeah. It's like I'm so busy being the chameleon for the 16 people around me. I can't be Jake Ryans mm-hmm. to actually have a good combo with Spencer a lot of the times. Do you think it's maybe like that?
I don't know. It was just always odd. This is weird. Yeah, it was very interesting.
Well, it's crazy that like two people can remain in the same, I guess, situation, but be having vastly different, like I never even thought like, okay, here's another alpha male and my alpha is bumping up against his. Like, it was never any sort of I don't know, we're so wrapped up in our own heads a lot of the times mm-hmm. that it's interesting. Spencer, you know what I do want to talk about? Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. I would like to, I mean, we could we could have a whole longer episode one of these days about this, but can you give me, so one thing that I feel pretty strongly about is it's kind of popular for girls to jokingly make fun of, this is a broad statement, this damn chair, I swear I'm going to throw it out the door, girls to make a broad statement about, like, let's say oh, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you're nerdy, or oh, if you play video games, like, oh, you're a grown man, like, whatever. My opinions are, whatever it is that you like, whether that's like playing the flute with your toes, or if it's
Nice.
dyeing all your white shirts blue every Friday, like whatever you love to do, especially if it's by yourself. I really am a fan for people doing things that's like that rips them out of like their friend group into a different friend group, you know. I think that it's important to like see things as not just like, oh, that's what a nerd does, because we accidentally make fun of them. So I think we can humanize our interests when we learn about them. That's what I'm trying to not ramble on about. We can humanize our interests when we learn about them. So Spencer, will you please teach me a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons?
Do you want me to tell you why it's awesome, or do you want me to tell what it is?
Start with why it's awesome.
Okay, so I think it's incredibly awesome because you get to sit around with all your... So, okay, let's say you wrote a book, but you don't know how any of it resolves.
Okay.
So, a little preface. The way it works is you have a group of people that are the players, and then one dude that plays everyone. Like, every character in the world makes the world, writes the story, or sets up all the things, and then you guys kind of collaboratively improv, go through all this together, and kind of have like an oral collaborative storytelling moment. It just allows people to, okay, you make a character in a world where you can deal with highly sensitive issues or like really tense things in a very safe bubble through the lens of someone else. So you write this really deep character and you get to deal with really, really hard problems that are really real, but you can never touch them in real life because they're just dangerous. If you're ever in any of these situations, it's like a life or death
Could
kind
you
of
give
thing.
a short example of maybe one of these situations?
Okay, so like if you are playing in a game and you're in a like political discourse and you're like dealing with the fate of nations, or you're like trying to help these townspeople, like this is a dire moment that requires a lot of empathy for these people, and you're like considering other sides. But if you're really in this, it's really a big problem in real life because something's going really bad. And you have to look at this through someone else's eyes that you have created with all their flaws. So now you get a look at a world through someone else's eyes that's really torn up. And that teaches you a great amount of empathy. And then you get to tell the story with your friends. And it's this big bonding experience. It's actually, I would trade it for any form of media forever for the rest of my life.
Amazing.
Yes, it's very excellent for introverts too, because if you're really locked up with who you are, you get to like go to this fantasy world. You get to be a different person, and then you get to like hang out with your friends and interact and be very boisterous. You just get to play someone other than you for a while.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is a lot of times we have to make these masks that we have to be in public, but we get to make a mask that we enjoy now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is super important. Yeah, I always think like young kids, there's a lot to be taught. Like it seems like a very intricate game, but I think if they started like diving into that world. So Dungeons and Dragons, it's a board game. I mean, that's a terrible...
It's a tabletop game.
Tabletop. Oh, right. Yeah. Geez,
Which is kind of the same thing, but it's a theater of the mind. So I describe the setting. I'm the game master. That's the dude that plays everyone.
The narrator, kind of?
Essentially.
Okay.
So they walk into a bar. I'm like, okay, well, there's a dwarf bartender. She's female. She's got orange hair, like very, very cunning looks. There's a man in a black trench coat in the back, brandishing an elvish dagger. He is very nervous, like scouring the room. Looks like he's up to no good. There's a bar fight in the left corner, and I just paint this picture, and then I say, okay, what would you like to do? And then the characters decide what they want to do, and you just have this back and forth. But it does take a lot of trust in each other and writing ability. I mean, at first you're just not good at writing characters, so it's not as enthralling. But once you learn the intricacies of all these things, like writing a deep character with many flaws, and you get to play through this world, it's really fun. And I would say it's the most engaging thing that I do, and I would give it up for nothing. And it's something that I will always do forever, and I really highly recommend everyone try it at least once, especially if you like video games. Like, it is such a violently personal experience that you could have with your friends, and no one else is ever going to have that too. And all these rules that are set up in this book, you just don't have to abide by them. Like, if this is cooler for me to just not allow, like, just allow this to happen. Like, this is make-pretend land, and we're just hanging out and telling the story. Like, oral storytelling is such an important part of tradition in almost all cultures, except for it's gone because we have the internet. Like, when you get to sit down...
And now if you're at a podium or around a campfire, you're probably a jackass.
Yes, maybe a little bit.
Storytelling, it's important.
But it's just a beautiful experience, and I will do it with my kids because it's just opened me up to so many really amazing people and amazing things, and it's just allowed me to have such a strong bond with, like, my close friends that I do it with.
Yeah.
Like, in these, you just get you become the person that you're playing, and you just get so enveloped in the story, it's awesome. It's so satisfying to do.
Dude, it sounds so fun. I feel like it's you, because again, it's people judging it off not really knowing. I mean, me personally, before like, I mean, because Tyler's been into it for quite a while too. Before he had ever like mentioned it to me, I didn't really have any opinions about it. But in the back of my mind, I did think I knew that it was like, oh, it's just like some board game that like your typical nerdy guy would play.
Yeah, it's for neckbeards that don't have girlfriends sitting in their mom's basement drinking Mountain Dew. Right. They just go roll dice and kill dragons.
Isn't it so funny that we have these? We don't even mean to, but we have these postures towards things before we even ever interact with them. It's so silly. But I think that, man, that sounds like, just think about that without the name, not knowing anything. But even if you don't really like dragons, the situation you just said, like, that is the coolest idea for a game ever. Okay, so you make up your own situation. You walk into a bar and here's these things that are happening. Now what? Like, the possibilities there are endless. The excitement that I feel, even as you were just telling me, I just want to be a part of that. So can we just make the rest of this podcast Dungeons and Dragons? What's our situation?
Oh, damn, I'm going to need a lot more stuff
just
than that.
Give me a world to work in.
I made a whole world, too, though.
So do you have, like, re-existing characters? Like, so when your friends play with you, do you have a name that you potentially go by?
They play a static character for the entire thing. They play one person.
Cool.
We've probably played for 120 hours, and I've just, depending on their backstories, what their flaws are, and like.
So you know their characters more over time too.
Yeah, so do they. And you slowly get to know this person.
And that curates the story even better.
You just develop nuance, and everyone flows together. And if you write your backstories to like line up, and then you got interpersonal problems, but then you also have like world problems, and it's this insane simulation of a fantasy world that actually deals with a lot of real life philosophical points, and you get to work through maybe your own trauma. One of my favorite things to do is play characters as close to my chest as I physically can, and I get to deal with all my own problems and wrongs in this fantasy world where nothing bad's going to happen. It's such an amazing, like, and it's so good for your brain too. So I basically 70% of the time I'm improvising. So they can just do whatever they want. So if I put them in a town, they're like, hey, we're going to go town, we're going to go up to the next town, and we're going to do this thing. I'm like, okay, I didn't prep for that. So now I have to improv for 4 hours about, okay, well, what's in that room? Then you got to figure out what's in that room. So the amount of like mental flexing I have to do.
Right. So improv is a pretty important tool. I grew up acting. I loved the stage. So improv is not a foreign thing to me. I think understanding improv, I always think have you watched The Office?
Yeah.
Do you ever see Michael Scott when his improv, he just train wrecks every situation. He's like, and I have a gun, and now it's just different. Mm-hmm. Like, that's another thing, like problem solving that you learn from games like that. Because so your people can't just be like, and I threw a smoke grenade into the bar and everybody had to leave, because that just derails the whole thing, right?
You can, but what's the social repercussions? Okay, now you killed a bunch of people in a town, now the guards are after you, and now you got to deal with this. Hey, would your character do that?
Does that go against his values?
Yeah, you're a good natured character. Would you really kill these people? Like, if you actually write a character and you abide by it, it will just tell you how to act.
Can we just say that real life is exactly like this?
Yeah, it's a simulation of real life.
Yeah,
it's like a big-ass simulation of real life, and you actually will learn a lot about yourself.
You can choose your adventure here, you guys. You can choose your adventure. I'm in a studio in my home, and I'm talking to like one of my very good friends on microphones that I know about, and I purchased them. And like when I was a little kid, I was just like, I like music, and like you can choose your adventure. Your adventure could be like, music makes me happy, or a paintbrush makes me happy, or Carhartts make me happy, or being in the woods whatever it is, man. Just use Smurf shirts make me so fucking happy. Size large Smurf shirts. I just want to spend the rest of my life with them. And you just point at that, and they're going to open a bunch of other doors. I was like, music that opens all these other doors. So, something to do. Improv is a huge thing, obviously, with D&D.
It's most of it. I would say it's an 80% of what happens. If you actually were like a thespian, we really should do this together because you would really enjoy it.
What's a thespian? Define that.
A theater person.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you also define improv? Like, make sure that's.
Well, it's yes and. So it's like you're in a dark room and there's a light switch. And then you're like, okay, well, I go flip it. And then you slowly just work off this thing that's you're just bouncing off each other. Mm-hmm. So,
can you give an example of someone who would potentially, like, let's say, quote unquote, ruin that bar situation you were just talking about? Like how could they come in as like a train wreck who doesn't understand like the rules of what's going on, and they just kind of halt you guys? Is that possible?
Like a player?
Yeah. What I'm hinting at is kind of like a social unawareness, right? Like you're trying to be yourself so much, you're trying to be the funny guy that you just kind of ruin this game that everyone's playing.
There's this thing called being a murder hobo. That's just what it's called.
It's epic.
And so, like, usually if you're telling a big narrative, you want to have a pretty congruent worldview, and your characters want to be deep, and they just, like, don't fly off the rails. And, like, so, like, okay, if you're playing Grand Theft Auto and you just go kill everyone, that's what being a murder hobo is. Like, you're just causing mayhem for no apparent reason, and it doesn't go, like, your character has no point. You're just killing stuff and poking the world.
Nobody else can play with you in that game either.
Yeah, that derails stuff, because you just aren't abiding to a story. We're not telling a story, we're just rolling dice and killing stuff, and that's not the fun part. If you want to do that, just play games, like video games. That will derail it. Because you're just not abiding by our social contract that we're about to tell the story. You're just going to go kill stuff and grab and loot.
Yeah, you have to have rules for games to exist. I mean, if you, like, football even, if there was no rules in football, like, okay, you just score a touchdown, but you just keep running and you go home with the football because it's mine now. And nobody else gets to play anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have rules.
I will say, though, if you can get everyone together to tell this story and they all agree on some stuff, you can just, like, really fly off the rails if you follow in that. Like, there's a very large section of what is okay culturally in this setting.
Yeah.
And I will say that if you don't have a creative outlet, start to do creative writing. Do it. Like, read a sci-fi book, read a fantasy book, read a true crime, see what you like. Like, study themes, go enjoy stuff. I was always told myself I was this rational being, and I just not an artsy guy at all. I mean, I learned how to play guitar pretty easily, but not to any real proficiency. When I started doing this, and, like, really, really writing, like, a lot, just for, like, 5 people that we sit down at the table at, and then watching them really enjoy it. This has been one of the most rewarding, beautiful things I've ever done, and it's made me flex my creative brain to such a high degree. And I really think those people that tell themselves that they aren't creative are just lying to themselves, and it really can be. And it's such an excellent way to express yourself, and it feels so incredibly good.
I agree, dude. I always say it's like a feedback loop for Shaylee. If she says anything like, I'm not creative, I'm like, hey, babe, will you like sketch this out for me, or will you draw this, or like, what do you think, or something? Or she's like, I don't know, I can't visualize that, I'm creative. I'll show her a song, and she'll be like, I don't understand. And I'm like, she says that she's not creative, but I'm always just like, you're wrong.
Yeah, yes, and you got to believe in yourself. You just got to allow yourself to let go. Just letting go of the words that you say that you are, like, oh, I'm not creative. Bullshit. And go do it.
Yeah, it's a human ability is to be creative. It's a thing that you get to do.
Yeah, you get to synthesize things, your ideas. You get to put them all together in a very specific way that no one else could have, and that is definitely art. And I don't care if only one person likes it. The beauty about D&D is I get to value my own ideas, and only 4 people have to think it's cool. So only 4 people. It's just for these 4 people. That's fucking awesome. And it just feels great. It's one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had, and I really think that people should try it. There's a bunch of other games that are like more real life setting too. Like, it's not like this is a massive genre of games that.
Yeah, so that's the world of course, Dungeons and Dragons. But that's so tabletop game. Do you think a lot of them kind of have a little bit sort of the same?
Yeah, you got like sci-fi games, you got like vampire games, you got games that are just all about romance. Like, I don't want females to think that this is just a dude thing. Like, this is an awesome thing. You should get your girlfriends together and do, and just like hang out, and you can just test all these things. It's like a very excellent thing to do.
So one thing with we were texting earlier this morning about it. The improv reminded me of it. I think I was telling you this morning about running a bit of a like a Saturday Night Live thing. Did I tell you about that? In high school, I didn't run it. I was in a Saturday Night Live thing. Essentially, we were shut down halfway through because someone in the crowd was offended at something that we specifically had done.
Oh, that's what you're trying to tell me.
Yeah. So I didn't want to say it all in text, but so what happened when I was in high school? We had just like the coolest. I'd been in drama classes and acting and all that. In our drama class, turned into this like lenient, super cool, awesome thing. Like we were pretty self-sufficient with our own stuff. So we basically made for like a senior night a Saturday Night Live thing, to where it's in between like some other performances of art of like the choir and stuff like that. We would go out and we would take the stage for 10 minutes in between and kind of mix it up. But so we had like individual funny skits. We ended up doing one, and this was way back when. Like, this may seem like absurd now, but way back when I was in high school, this is 2010, and we did a skit where something about the swine flu. This is how far along it was. This everybody was freaking out about swine flu. Our joke was like, maybe everyone's taking the swine flu a little too seriously, and we had like a fake like death on stage, like a fake gun, like fake, again, like please put yourself back in 2010. Like this wasn't
way
weird.
Different.
But what happened was someone in the audience had recently had someone in their life that committed suicide. And so she I don't know, she didn't like stand up and point her finger, but she like happened to know someone who was in charge. She came and said like, this is not okay, blah, blah, blah. And that person who she came up to, obviously like, we don't know what to do with these situations apparently. So we got shut down. Like literally they're like, I'm sorry, you guys can't go on. We're like, what are you talking about? We haven't even done half of our skits. We've been working on this for 4 months. What are you saying? And we literally had to like leave. Like we were done. Like we weren't allowed to finish it because our skit on stage, out of all like the, whoever, whatever amount of people were in the crowd, that person was offended. So I forget exactly what the pinpoint, what the cornerstone of our conversation this morning, but it was in regards to that, the crowd.
So the question is this person's one feeling valid enough to ruin everybody else's viewing experience? Like, are you, as a person, allowed to just say, I think this is wrong and I want it shut down? Or should you just say, hey, I'm personally not comfortable with this, I'm going to leave?
Yes.
Like, is that, because that's a valid opinion to have. Mm-hmm. Like, that is, like, I do my best to never say, like, oh, I'm going to kill myself, or like, this makes me want to kill myself, especially when I'm around mixed company, because I don't know, like, what that's going to trigger.
Yeah, but you're going to end up tiptoeing around a lot of people if you're following that same suit your whole life.
Yeah, but like, where's the line? Like, how much am I supposed to dance around other people's like internal problems and speech? Because you can't just like walk around in the world like it's just there's eggshells everywhere.
Yeah.
But you also need to be considerate about others. Like, I do think that lady was probably in the wrong. I mean, good intentions. Understand it.
I mean, she assuredly she's in pain. Someone next to her just took their own life, and it hurts her enough to like, I'd be like, I need to escape this pain that's starting to come up so bad that I need to go tattle or not tattle, but tell someone. I mean, that's a pretty intense feeling that she's feeling, right?
Yeah, but should she have just left and said, hey, I don't think this is good, so I'm going to leave. I'm not going to grace this area with my presence? Or
yeah, I think this standing up for what you believe in is being thrown into like situations like that, which is just like, hey, tragedies happen. Like, this is, of course, again, this is talking about this right now is just like, there's a lot of weird ironies because like I was going to kill myself and like all these weird, now with society, things are way more offensive, but it's kind of what I just want to address, like even that whole thing. Like, I just think we can't continue. This was in 2010, and these are the kind of things that happen hardcore now, right? It seems like, anyway. It seems like the person who is in the crowd gets this, like, stand up for what you believe in, confused with I'm an audience. When you're an audience member, you be an audience member. You don't shout at the person on the stage. You don't have an interjection with the person on the stage. You leave it. You don't try to shut it down.
I mean, just where's the line is always the question.
Yeah.
Like, how much are we supposed to pander to people when they're, quote, offended? I really do take into consideration everyone's feelings when they're offended about something, because I'm sure it's very valid. But the problem is a lot of people are offended in bad faith just because they don't like the person that is offending them. So they're going to go, they're going to say whatever they need to say to get this person away from them or not speaking anymore. Like, do we completely alter society because some people are offended? I mean, this is a very sensitive topic, and it's also there's a lot of nuance in every single...
In so many different corners.
Yeah, every situation deserves its own consideration. But when do we just make being offended a personal problem, and when is it a societal problem? Because sometimes being offended is kind of your problem if your sensibility is very sensitive, and it's your personal duty to stay away from things that offend you. But some things should offend you no matter who you are, and definitely need to be changed, like slavery and shit like that.
Right.
Or like racism.
Yeah, there's certain things where you totally should stand up for, but
I just think that our efforts would be better focused if we reserved all our outrage for things that are extremely important and not in minutia, because we get lost in being really upset about a lot of really small things that definitely do matter, but on an overall level, like if we if people that are more sensitive or chronically offended would just focus their efforts to some really big things, they'd probably get a lot further. Because the regular average person that knows nothing about these small details of society and life, and they just are not empathetic to this person, will just think they're being a whiny little baby and then not take anything they say seriously.
Right. Yeah, we have to have empathy, but we have to have, again, self-awareness of our own self in that situation. Like, this situation is a lot bigger than me. This situation, my past, my recent history of my personal life doesn't really have anything to do with this situation. I'm an attendee, and my job in this crowd is as an attendee. So whatever that stretches out, this is a theater analogy here, but whatever the expansion of that may be.
Life's so weird, Jake.
It's so weird, dude. I don't get it. I don't know, we're just trying to figure out the point of it all, right? Like, without knowing an answer, again, like we just accepting that I may not know an answer, but I think I have found life in just knowing that it's weird and exploring the weirdness of it.
Yeah, and there is no answer, and that's kind of the fun part. It seems extremely daunting, but that's the beauty in it. My personal belief is that this is just completely meaningless. Everything's an accident. The world is complete chaos. That's super frightening, but you got to look at it like that's really freeing as well, because there's no anchors on you. There's no purpose to this. You just get to live your truest self and then be what you want to be. So there's an old Greek proverb. Not proverb, but it's a story. So I believe Sisyphus is one of the Greek gods or demigods, and I can't remember if he tricked Zeus. He tricked one of the other gods, and he was forced to roll a boulder up a hill while a vulture ate his stomach forever. And to look at that, he was like, "Oh, this is perpetual suffering," but this is an allegory for life. Like, you're just always pushing this boulder up this hill. Like, this is a constant struggle, but you must see the chaos in this, and you must be a smiling Sisyphus. Like, you must relish in this. Like, this is what you have, so you must enjoy it. This is your only option.
Yeah, I think that, complaining is a strange thing. A lot of times people, like, you can't just stand there and be like, here's what's happened to me. Here's what life is. Okay, like, you're still living it, though, so I'm going to go over here because you're kind of grumpy.
Yeah, being a victim only hurts you to some degree.
Yeah.
Like, people are rightfully, if you are literally a victim of something, you're rightfully a victim, but you choose whether to continue on being like that or not. And it's only going to detract from your own life if you constantly just refer to these things in your life that have been terrible, and you let these anchor you and hold you back, and you just constantly feed into this. This is just like very low ego, like, bullshit that goes on, and people just use it to stay comfortable. Like, if they can just justify all their bad actions and all their misplays in life because of this one thing that happened to them,
their story,
they're just never going to grow. Like, if you never break the chains of that, you're never gonna feel content or happy. You're just gonna live in this perpetual cycle of bullshit and blame. And what I've come to realize that all my problems are my fault, ultimately. They really are. And if they weren't put there by me, they still are my problem. And I must
you're the only one who could solve them or not solve them.
Yes.
And not solving them is pointless.
Like, I am the curator of my own life, and to put my problems on other people is just unreasonable and not helpful, and I will never get anywhere because of it. So
I think spending time, granted, like, just conversation and gossip is an existing thing, but spending time pointing out other people's problems to no prevail too is like, I think that's a lot of passing the time. That's a lot of what news does too. Again, is it presents other people's problems, so you have something to talk about with other people who also have watched those problems. Why not talk about your problems and be like, hey man, what would you do for this problem? And you could try that, and then you could make your life better. Like, don't just stay stag. And, a victim, when you're in the victim mindset, it sucks that word has, like, it sparks offendedness, and it sparks, like, offensiveness and victim. Those are both words that have been, like, catapulted and stolen by political whatever. But when you're in the seat of the victim, you don't see your own bullshit. Like in order to get better, you have to stop being a victim. It's kind of like, so a victim, the 12-step program, like for getting sober. the first step, they always say, well, I heard in the movies, like admitting that you have a problem. Well, the step right before admitting you have a problem is victimhood. I don't know that. I haven't studied 12-step programs. I could be just like, don't let me like ruin 12-step programs with that. But I'm just saying the state of being that you're in of like, here's what happened to me and I'm never going to get better because of it and blah, blah. So in turn, you're kind of a fucking asshole to the people around you, right? And it's like when they're like, hey, you got to be nicer to us. And you're like, I can't be nicer because this thing happened. Well, you're in the victim part. And like, that's the thing is what happened to you is so valid. You know, a lot of the times these people have gone through traumatic experiences, but when you're stuck in the victim spot, you can't move. You can't be budged. You're like, well, you would do it too. Or of course I'm like this because this happened. And it's like, no, you are like this because that's happened, but you need to understand that the only person who could change it now is you. You know, when you're in the seat of the victim, you can't change and improve and move forward. You have to realize that you've been a victim, and that, you know, with me with the depression thing, it was like, it wasn't, it doesn't have to be self-imposed to make, you know, I finally realized that I was the one keeping myself in depression, thinking that I needed to suffer, thinking that this is just how it is, thinking that every single thought that came up out of thin air was just me, and that's who I am, and all these like evil thoughts and bad thoughts are just me, and the self-hate thoughts are just the only thoughts that I'm capable of having. But you got to grow out of that victim thing, man. It'll keep you down. It's just not safe.
Well, people living it their whole lives too.
Yeah. I mean, you can make a whole personality out of it. How does that even happen? That's
people just get beaten down by the world and the pressure of life, and you just fall into this perpetual victimhood, and you just go to work so your time, come home, watch TV, eat, and be sad. And dude, fuck that. 100%,
yeah, fuck that.
Absolutely fuck that. That
Don't
is
be
miserable.
sad.
And then your suffering is also pushed onto other people, and I would say that that's not ethical.
Right.
Like, as a person that I hope cares about other people, you would want to reduce the suffering of others. And if you are internally suffering, and then in turn other people are suffering because of it, you're now way more of a problem than you thought you were. And don't be upset about that, but it's just something like, hey, I'm suffering, I'm making other people suffer, and I would like this to not happen anymore.
Yeah, you don't want that, dude. You don't want to, like, you know, you don't want to be mean to the people around you. Like, if things are causing you to be mean to the people around you, just, I mean, listen, I don't have to know you. Whatever listener, if you're being an asshole to the people around you, you don't want to do that. I don't have to know you at all to know that you don't want to be doing that, dude. You want to be happy, right? Like if you're being mean and you're being like or your anger, or you're lashing out at people, if you don't know how to handle situations, you're screwing people, whatever it is that you're going through because you're in the victim mindset, or if you're stuck in it, it's things that happen to you that you haven't dealt with. It's like what's happening is your intelligence is sabotaging your life. You know, like you're turning against yourself, and just knowing, like, just saying that to yourself, like, oh crap, okay, I'm doing that thing. I don't want to be here though. And that's all it takes. From there, you can start healing. You can start changing and start not being the victim, and start, okay, let's see what I can change, and let's be aware of my actions, the person that I am when I show up to the people around me, my family, whatever.
So probably, I think it was about 2 years ago, I had a very traumatic experience that I would rather not have documented. So I'm not going to actually talk about any of it, but it left me with crippling anxiety and depression, and I had never felt either of those things ever. And they left me with like a lot of like weird body sensations, so I became a hypochondriac, and I just was this perpetual victim for probably 6 months, and I completely suffered. And I'd never, until my outlook and view changed on life, and I decided that if I saw that what was happening and decided to just not be like that anymore, it just was never going to change. So you can control only yourself, and it is only detracting from your own life to stay like this, and I really encourage people to not be so beaten down by life, rather, and maybe just take the steps to not be that way. It will only help you, and what hurts you the most is just remaining in this stagnant pool of sadness and depression that is just, it feels like you're drowning, and I know that personally, but there is air above that if you just allow yourself to relinquish some of these things.
Yeah, dude, the air, oh God, the air after victimhood and depression, and the colors after all that, the beauty of the world that's returned to you when you have such a change of perspective of like, oh, okay, I can help myself. I mean, that's the thing that I want to be clear, and I want to like overly explain to people, is that like you can't you can't remain in the victim place and get better with whatever you're going through. I want to go back to what you just said, that there was 6 months of your life where you had a lot of anxiety and stuff too. You were in the victim mentality. The word victim, again, like I said, it's just confusing nowadays. It's something that when you say like, oh, you're being the victim, it feels like it's like, oh, that's offensive that you just said that, you don't understand all these things. So can you give me an example of kind of like maybe a victimhood? Like what's a conversation that you and I maybe would have had within those 6 months, if I was like trying to say like, hey, you can get better by doing this, what would your reaction be as a victim?
Well, I thought, so anxiety left me with like a lot of bodily tingles and like a lot of chest pain and whatnot, and I was really convinced that I was just dying. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm like, oh, and I've always told myself like I'm this rational, reasonable person. Like, of course I'm not being melodramatic, or I'm not taking these things to being ridiculous. So telling myself I'm smart and rational made all these feelings more valid. And if you would tell me that, hey, like, yeah, you're fine, I'd be like, well, I mean, I do know that, but I'm not. Like, you don't live in my body, you don't know what it's like, so... Right. But
like you don't understand these feelings and I understand them, but really what was happening is you had a misunderstanding of your own feelings in your body, right?
And they were all self-perpetuated as well. Like, I did all of this to myself. Like, my internal workings is the reason I was here, and everyone could see it, and even I could see it in my hardest of hearts. But the irrational, because I mean, I was kind of just boiled down to like caveman instincts, chimp brain, just like always in a hyper aroused state, just always anxious, always in this fight or flight state, and your prefrontal cortex, or the front part of your brain that does all your like cognitive thinking, like all your real thinking, shuts off when you're in fight or flight. So it's really hard to reason. So, and it's fucked up because I just know all this stuff, and I did then, and it's like you can be as rational as you want to, but it's very hard to escape these things. And until I made a really conscious effort to like start meditating and enjoying the things, and just realizing that this is just the way it is, like, and I'm just going to enjoy my life. I'm not going to let this beat me, because I've seen other people in my life just become completely wilted and beaten by things that I don't think are worthy to be beaten by, and I was currently doing that, and I'm like, I will not accept this for myself. I will not live the rest of my life like this. And at one point in time, I really thought, I'm going to be like this forever. It's never going to not be like this. And that is the lowest of low that I ever got to, just to feel like this is just my life now, and learning to not accept that and to seek out ways to mitigate these things. I think it all comes down to mastering the thing between your ears. Like your third eye. Yeah.
Just kidding. But actually a little bit not. Dude, I think that, thanks for sharing that for one. It's so, man, because like in the middle of it, you don't understand that you can get better. It's you that's got to do it, though.
Yeah, you're in the maze.
Yeah, you're in the maze.
You're deep in the maze. You're like, you tripped up, you got to cut.
I think a lot of the like genetics is always a good thing that happens too. Our intelligence likes saying, well, it's genetics, like if your mom had knee problems and your knee starts to kind of hurt a little bit, you're like, oh no, here it goes. There's the knee thing that my family has.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a personal trainer limb and say, don't fucking succumb to bodily pains just because you think that's the way it is. Being in pain is a fail state, and you don't have to live like that. So seek out ways to mitigate that. You just don't have to be like that. Just because your parents' knees hurt doesn't mean your knees have to hurt. Stop putting hard labels on everything that's wrong with you. Like all these things can change for the most part, other than like obviously extreme cases. But even in those things, if you come to terms with that, you will find more inner peace. And just like, if you have back pain, don't just accept that you have back pain, dude. Like, that shit sucks, and you shouldn't have to live like that.
Do not accept that. See, that's something that we accept. The victim mentality allows you to accept what is happening to you. Like, this has happened to me. Okay, here's another thing that's happened to me. You don't. When you get out of that victim mentality, when you want to get out of it, you say, "Here's the thing that happened to me. All right, well, got to work a little bit harder. Oh, okay. Well, this weight is on my shoulder, or this weight's on my shoulder. I got to keep doing things though."
Dude, just look at it like a lesson. Like, that's what I started looking at all my problems. Is like, this is just a chance to be better than I am now.
Right. All right, man. Well, we'll touch more on that. The old body-mind connection is definitely something that I do want to touch on. So on that wonderful note, Spencer, I appreciate you. And listeners, if you're listening, wherever you're at, unless you're in a car because you might just die, stretch right now. Whatever you're doing, drop and give me 50. But don't actually give me 50. Give me 50 seconds of stretching. Just stretch your neck, tuck your chin to your chest, wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. Something we don't do enough is stretch, and I think that everybody should stretch. So
don't forget to breathe.
Don't forget to breathe. Breathe from your belly and stretch. I love y'all. Spencer loves y'all. Junkyard Love Podcast. Out.